This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you want to get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
This is your be careful what you don't wish for leader fan radio network.
Excuse me?
And KFAN.com. 2 minutes, 13 seconds past 3 o'clock Central Daylight Time. Welcome back. It is a Tuesday edition of the Bumper to Bumper extravaganza on a pretty summery-like Tuesday afternoon here in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. I am the host of the program for Marine State and Wretch newspaper, the Twin Cities. My name is Dan Barreiro, I before E, except in Barreiro. Guardsy produces the show, two-time state high school tennis champion and a man who attended not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 different colleges and universities all around the upper Midwest, correct?
Yes. I think they were all in the upper Midwest.
Yeah, I guess in.
Yeah.
You didn't venture into any of them. Like, you didn't end up at, like, Pepperdine for a semester.
Oh, I wish. Have you ever been to Pepperdine?
Yeah, if you had been there for a semester, I'm guessing you probably would have. Well, maybe you wouldn't have graduated. Because does anybody ever graduate from Pepperdine?
They do.
How do they pull it off?
I'm not sure. Well, we learned that USC, all the rich people were basically buying the spots in USC, so I'm sure there's a way that you can figure it out. I actually, the first time I visited Pepperdine as an adult, having visited there, I called someone who was very important in my life and basically questioned his judgment and then questioned mine because he attended briefly Pepperdine and left and
What's
transferred.
wrong with him?
That's what I was saying. And this is a man who impacted my life as much as anybody growing up, one of my old coaches. And I just said, I look at everything differently now because of your decision before you even met me to leave Pepperdine. It's beautiful.
What was his rationale for leaving Pepperdine?
I think it was very Goodwill Hunting-like. I think it was, I got to see about a girl.
Serious? Oh, okay.
I think there might have been something there. I'm not exactly sure. I was so mad, I don't even think I listened. But no, did not go to Pepperdine. And as we always mention, 5 schools with no degree, which is a lot harder to do than you'd think.
It is very hard to do.
It's very
hard to do.
For now.
So, speaking of Malibu, the other day, you end up with all these channels that there's a lot of, I think there's more nostalgia channels than there ever were.
Yeah.
I mean, there's almost perhaps too many of them. There's one that I didn't even know I had. It's called the Cozy Channel. Do you know about the Cozy Channel?
I'm sure I've watched it, but I don't think it's one of my favorites.
And the Cozy Channel has, among other things, back episodes of the Rockford Files. And, of course, one of the famous, for those who are old enough to remember the Rockford Files, one of the interesting quirks of that show was that Rockford, the private investigator, played capably by James Garner, lived out of a trailer on the beach in Malibu, California. I assume that trailer is no longer there, right? It's got to be gone, does it? Or is it up? Is it now almost like a museum kind of a piece?
Right, or is it somewhere else as a museum?
Moved. Yeah, that could be.
I'll look. Rockford Files.
Because I'm pretty sure that's where the location was.
Paradise Cove.
Oh, moved. There I see. Moved to Paradise Cove.
29 Cove Road, which is adjacent to a pier and a restaurant.
So it's there now.
I think it's
Does anybody
still there.
live in it?
That I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Still early in the investigation.
Still early.
In the investigation. I'd rather not comment.
That's the beauty of the fact that it's a 3.5-hour show.
We've got time
to meander into it and get into it as well. I don't even know how we ended up. Well, yeah, because I was
my college is Pepperdine,
yeah,
Malibu,
Pepperdine University, yeah, for sure. That's always the question, how distracting it becomes, or is it believe it or not, you start taking it for granted more than you'd like to admit.
Sure.
Because it's there, you're in it every day. And at some point, you can't just be walking around in a goofy daze. You have to actually, if you're going to college,
right,
presumably attend class.
When we went to visit there, just because I'd never seen it, my wife and I think one kid, he was a baby, we pull up to the school. They've got a gate, on campus that you have to pull up to drive in, and you have to stop at the gate and probably let them know what you're doing. And so that freaked me out because I thought, well, they're never going to let a couple of idiots just roll onto the campus, right? There's got to be more to this. So we pull up. There's a car in front of us. We pull up to the gate, and we just say, we're just a couple of tourists. We just wanted to get a look around, see the campus. The security guard handed us a map, turned around, handed us
exactly
a map,
what you wanted,
and said, 4 stop signs, 4 right turns. Yeah. That'll be the best view. And it was awesome. We got up there, and I looked at my wife who went to school in Moorhead, Minnesota. And
that might be a little different.
Malibu, and you just go, what were we thinking?
Yeah.
And then you're actually surprised. Tuition's not as expensive as you would think. I assume the cost of living and everything else is expensive out there, but you assume a college like that should cost $200,000 a year to go to.
One would assume.
But it wasn't. It was more in
$50?
No, it was probably, I mean, it's
pretty
still expensive, but not the sticker shock that you would expect.
It didn't scare you like you thought it would.
So more on Malibu Fan Line later.
Riggs from Lethal Weapon. I don't know how many people we have in our audience who remember the Lethal Weapon series. Lived in a trailer on a beach like Rockford. I haven't watched any of those films in so long. I'll take 612 guys' hint on that or belief on it. I don't remember that was the case. Yeah, obviously it's a great signature.
Yes.
Right? Especially because when you look at photos of the trailer, it did look about as dumpy and as beaten down a trailer as one could find. And I think, like you say, it has been moved. It looks in the photos I'm looking at now online, it looks different too. It looks like they've done some different work to it as
that trailer now, if you want to buy it, costs $6.2 million probably.
It's probably true.
In California real estate. Harbaugh lived in an RV when he first moved out to L.A.
Yes, he did.
Close to the Chargers area. He and the defensive coordinator.
And then didn't he give himself a then he rewarded himself with a, what was it, a practice?
What did we call those?
What did we call those, or what did he call them?
Achievement stickers, weren't they?
Stickers, whatever they were.
Something like that?
Yeah, there was something that he apparently is still giving out. I have it here somewhere. I'll try to find it from a few days ago on the program. I mentioned that we are indeed your be careful what you do not wish for leader, because I want to follow up on a subject we explored briefly. Well, I guess it was more than briefly yesterday. Yesterday was a very heavy A-section show, and there will be many more sojourns into the A-section the rest of this week. Remind me to give you some guest updates later in the broadcast today. But we did have Johnny Athletic in studio, and we chatted about the Kevin Durant sweepstakes, so to speak, which a lot of people in the know seem to think will be resolved at the very latest draft night, but a lot of people think that it might be resolved even before then. Which, what do we have? I think a Game 7 in the NBA Finals would be Sunday. And then the draft, is it Tuesday, Wednesday, or Wednesday, Thursday? I think it's Wednesday, Thursday. We can double check the dates. In any case, it's coming up.
Yeah, the 25th,
it's not that far off.
Yeah.
That would be Wednesday. You're right. Because the 23rd is Monday. In any case, one of the issues we explored, I have been, I think, maybe even more than you. I think you warmed to it, but I think I've been very aggressive for months about believing that you have to explore and see if you can acquire Kevin Durant. I'm not as offended or concerned by his age. I'm not as concerned as others might be because of the contract. I think from a basketball on-court standpoint, he is exactly what Anthony Edwards needs so he doesn't get frustrated and doesn't get a little bit shell-shocked, because he can take so much pressure, he being Durant, off of another great offensive player, that I think it would open up more avenues than the average Wolves fan even understands. On the other hand, you got to decide whether the price is worth it, There are a lot of variables there. But I've been stopped in my tracks because of the reporting on this story. That, if accurate, changes everything for me. Because, and the reporting I'm talking about is, if you want to believe it, again, that's what you have to be careful. I'm not saying the reporting isn't accurate, but you got to sometimes read the tea leaves. Is the reporting stuff that's being leaked for a strategic reason, or is it the truth? And if the truth is that Kevin Durant has expressed firmly that he doesn't want to come here because he means it, I ain't getting within 10 feet of him. I want nothing to do with a slightly disinterested, slightly annoyed, didn't get what I want Kevin Durant. I can't get near him because we have seen how toxic that can be with him. And there's a part of me, too, that sort of rebels against the why, what do I even have the tolerance for going down that road with somebody who has pretty much been has gotten his way time and again, and I guess it's everybody else's fault that it hasn't worked out other places. There are players where you say, well, they have preferences, but they're not going to, in the end, wherever they're going to go, they're going to give you what you think you're going to get, what you should get with that player at his best. I don't count on that. The people I trust on Kevin Durant say, be careful. Now, the X factor, as Johnny brought up yesterday, was the Jimmy Butler story. In fact, let's stay on schedule, and we'll follow up a little more on that. We've got Kevin Seifert coming up to put a bow on Vikings pre-training camp, because now that's the next big date. And I think quarterbacks are reporting July 26.
That makes sense.
It's right around the corner now. It's crazy. So let's stay on schedule. Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is wide open. 6-4.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
686. Remember that Jimmy Butler, when he was still with Miami and wanted out, was telling people, well, at least through his agent or agency, I don't want to go to Golden State, right? He wanted to go to Phoenix, as I recall it.
Yes.
And you could say, well, where did he end up? He ended up at Golden State, and it went very well. Until it didn't. It went well. So that's the comeback to saying, I don't want to get near Durant if he doesn't want to be here, because ultimately Butler ended up someplace he didn't want to, and he's dangerous, you'd think, when it didn't, when he doesn't get his way. On the other hand, he immediately knew he was going to get his money. And for Jimmy Butler, it's always been about that part of it, the contract, right? Maybe the same would be true if you talk to Durant and say, we can't do anything about the cold, but we can do something about your contract situation, and we're ready to extend at a number that we think will be viable for both entities. I don't know. But I am weary enough of this whole soap opera process in basketball when it comes to, quote unquote, star players, and he is a star player. He's one of the greatest offensive players who ever lived, that I'll backpedal and do the Sirwanga unless the due diligence is done and the Wolves know fairly certainly that a lot of this is talk, there's a lot of stuff being flying around and it's posturing and so forth, that indeed he would be willing to come here. I think he can be too damaging. given the risks that are inherent in making this deal at all, and what you're probably going to have to give up, I have zero interest in guessing whether, once he's there, he'll be fine. I'm sick of that. I'm tired of that. I'd almost rather they run the whole damn thing back again, even if I think it's a flawed team. Where are you on that?
Well, the problem with if Durant's not all in is the assumption is you are going to have to do the extension, right? To make him happy, to make anybody happy. And which, by the way, isn't always the case. The other guy that didn't want to be traded to a certain team within the last 6, 7, 8 years was Kawhi Leonard, didn't want to go to Toronto. And he didn't stay in Toronto, but everybody knew eyes wide open. We're taking a run at this thing for 1 year, and it was the ultimate payoff. They won the title. What scares me about it is because of how the finances are set up now, if you have a $50 or $60 million mistake, you're dead for 3 or 4 years. That's what Phoenix is dealing with right now. And it's not the Durant mistake, it's the Bradley Beal mistake.
Correct.
Right? That was the mistake they made to bring on that max contract. He can't go anywhere, has no interest in going anywhere.
And nobody has the no trade.
And nobody wants to take him on. Even if he found a team, a place that he'd want to go, no one else wants to pay Bradley Beal that much money. So you've got to be really careful. And that is why, if you rewind it and unwind it, that's why that remains the number one reason why they traded Karl Anthony Towns less than a year ago, because they didn't want to pay him in 2 years $60 million. It wasn't that they didn't think they could win with them or he wasn't a great fit. It was he's not good enough at $60 million when we're going to have to pay Ant to go ahead and do that. So that's why I would worry, because financially it's suicide.
I just,
if it doesn't work.
Well, and that's true. Although, again, the difference between now and Cat is that a $40 million deal is going back the other way if it's Rudy. A $33 million contract, or whatever it is going back if it's Randall.
Yeah.
That's what's a little bit different about this. But for me, above and beyond that, like I said, I'm done.
You don't want to see the bad body language
with a guy like that. I mean, he's a wonderful player, but the idea that I have to guess and project on that, as someone who was committed to the idea of looking as aggressively as possible because I think it's a great basketball fit, and I don't think he's going to fall off to the end of the table for a while offensively. I don't. But I've heard it from too many people the last 72 hours. If Durant's not all there, forget it. And then I go, well, why are we even messing with this? This shouldn't be that complicated. That where you have to thread this needle when you're paying him, at the very least for this upcoming season, regardless of a contract extension, the amount of money that he's making. And by the way, also granting him passage to a place where he has a chance to win big.
That's true.
Does he care about that? Because some people say, well, the perfect fit is Miami. How is he going to win in Miami?
He's not.
Because you're going to have to give up, I guess, unless there's a way for Miami to pull it off where they don't trade, who's the guard?
Tyler Hero.
Or Adebayo. Then I guess you could say, well, that's not a bad trio to battle with. But I still don't think that's a team that's got great championship possibilities. So it's like, well, we're back to, well, what does he want at this point? And if it's this complicated and I'm not sure, and I want, bleep you, man. Fine, we'll move on to, and it may end up hurting them because there's not, scores like that don't grow on trees. But I would say no, if that is indeed the case.
Well, honestly, after Johnny Athletics floated De'Aaron Fox yesterday,
well, that you put you in a different stratosphere.
That's what I started thinking about for.
But would the Spurs do that quickly, having just acquired him and signing him to an extension already, haven't they? Or have they not given him the extension?
I don't know if they have or not yet. But
I know they didn't know at that point they were going to have the number 2 pick.
Right, and that's what's changed. Yeah. So that's what you wonder about. And maybe they could get in on a Durant thing. Maybe Fox is part of that deal. I don't know.
Well, here's the other factor. I didn't even know if you thought about this. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can find it. Because I was unaware of this being a factor, and maybe I have to open my eyes a little bit. Let me get the inbox in the proper position. Well, here's another one that just came in. Durant's a heavy smoker. Minnesota's a legal state, so that might give us a leg up over the Texas teams. That's Jim in Becker. Is that true?
I don't know. I hadn't really thought of it. And is that going to be part of the pitch? I mean, are they going to put that in the PowerPoint?
libs are the reason Durant doesn't want to come here because of the high taxes, which in extension makes you guys the reason he wants no part of it. You live and you learn every day.
Well, we are seeing that more, aren't we? That the Florida Panthers are good because they don't have any state tax. Tampa Bay, same thing.
Yes.
If that was true, and I'm not saying it doesn't factor in, who was it? Oh, Harrison Phillips, when you had him on. Stanford guy. He talked about
Wilson
tax
Phillips
rates.
or Harrison Phillips?
Harrison Phillips. Okay. Hold on for one more day is a banger, though.
Yeah.
And he talked about that. I'm not saying that's not a factor.
No, I'm not either, but
it is coming up more and more now. I guess it's a sign of our times.
Yeah, well, and there's might be a little projecting going on in this case.
Think about what you're saying is elections have consequences.
I guess that's what
elections have consequences when it comes to free agent signings.
Even with a fully engaged Durant, what are you getting at the point? He was a great player, was worth all the baggage at one point. That time is over. So a couple people have said that's what needs to change is the point guard position. Who's to say you can't do both? I mean, the issue is this is to me alert the media Lindbergh baby stuff. I think we're well aware in this show that it's time for an upgrade of the point guard position. The timing is challenging because there's no doubt Tim Conley was as aggressive as he was last year in the draft, going up to get a point guard because he thinks that player, Dillingham, represents really the present and the future at the position, which is what? You score and you distribute, and a lot of stuff runs through you. And that he has the kind of explosiveness, the ability to make a play off the dribble, the ability to break down a defense that, the best teams tend to have at the point guard position. The question is whether he's ready immediately. That is this upcoming season. And if he's not, you can't. There's a lot of ways to still try to buffer at the position. We mentioned the name of which Ball is in Chicago? It's
Lonzo.
It's Lonzo Ball. Now Lonzo Ball's a risk because of injury issues. He's also cheap, and when he's played well. He's got, I think, more juice right now than Mike Conley does at this point to be a starter. So. No, we're well aware. In a perfect world, the change is point guard, right? You put the other, because what do we talk about this whole finals? The Pacers are dangerous, now in trouble, but dangerous when they generally play with two ball handling guards who can each break people down. That gives them an advantage. And the Wolves, at this point don't have that. So we're aware of it. The question is whether that player is attainable in the short run, because I don't think they've given up on Dillingham.
No,
right?
Definitely not.
They have to think that they believe he can make a jump at some point. It's just the timing may be a little. I do too. I just think the timing may be a little bit askew.
Can you piecemeal it enough though, where he plays a little bit more?
I'd like that.
Whether it's Dante, whether it's Ant taking more. If Durant has more of the scoring load, can Ant be on the ball a little bit more, like we talked about going back 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
I don't know. But the beauty about this is if it does happen, something's going to happen one way or the other before Wednesday. Yeah. Like we're going to.
Yes.
That's the best part about this whole thing is we're speculating and it's fun. There's going to be, I think, some type of resolution on a lot of different things.
On Durant for sure. Now, is it possible if they don't get Durant that there's another player we don't even know who that is? As we talked about yesterday, there was a good texter saying, how many times has Conley surprised us or semi-surprised us with names that nobody was thinking that might be even available and obtainable for here or that we even wanted? So there's also that possibility, which could go after the new contract, the new I guess you could say CBA, not the new CBA, but the new what's the word I'm looking for here? Salary cap year goes into effect, and when the salary starts again.
Right.
Emailer guy, I don't understand. You were good with A-Raj coming here. Well, the difference was presumably if A-Raj came here, he would be all in to coming here. That's the distinction I would make with what we're learning about the Durant situation. And again, behind the scenes, you got to have good people who can do the intel to get past the smoke. Is it smoke that he doesn't want to come here? Is that just a little bit of a game he's playing? Deep down, he wouldn't mind, but he's trying to manipulate as much as he can.
Right.
That's what you have to find out. But you got to be right. Because I'm not like I said, I'm not interested in messing around with Durantula. Do you like us today? Are we good? Have we done anything? Have done everything for you? Or is there something that's bothering you? You know what I mean? It's like life's too short at some point, is it not? It's like, and that's been his pattern, and that's why. Only
for the last 7 or 8 years, as I heard on another podcast. It's a great line.
It is a great line, and it's true, and that's where that's why a lot of people say, and these are the same people who say, as a player, he's still damn good, but you got to have that other thing, that other box checked, or otherwise your life is going to be made hellish. Bottom of the hour break. Let's talk to our favorite A-Raj correspondent, Kevin Seifert, Vikings/NFL talk, and maybe who is the backup quarterback that Zim despised?
Kellen Mond?
Kellen Mond update. We've got a Kellen Mond update from Seifert. That's next. Seifert covers the Vikings for ESPN and ESPN.com, formerly the Star Tribune. He joins us now via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Are you aware in football of an increasing fascination with, concern with, I guess you could say, state taxes, income taxes, as it pertains to where players who are, let's say, in free agency, NFL players who are in free agency, taking that more and more under consideration in terms of where they want to land?
Yeah, no, that's been at least the thing if you're covering contract negotiations for a while. I can remember that coming up in my first round of being the Vikings beat writer in the early 2000s. And that was when it felt like teams were recruiting people more and competing during the actual free agent market for players. And, you'd have people coming in for visits before they signed. There'd be times when coaches would camp out at players' houses at midnight because the free agent market opened at like 12:01 in the morning at a certain day. And so that was considered, a prime competitive thing for states like Florida. Maybe Texas is another one.
Yes.
And then kind of counterbalancing against states that, have higher state income taxes like Minnesota or like California. So, yeah, it's been a thing for a while. I'm not sure how much it really, factors in now because you can just offer more, I guess, and make sure that the net result is
that's
equal.
the way around it, right?
But it certainly has been something that's been discussed for a while.
It's a bit in Canada too, right? There's the contrast between the Canadian dollar and the U.S. dollar as well, correct?
Yeah. Although I think that the overall compensation in the CFL is low enough that you're.
That's a good point.
I don't know how competitive it is, regardless.
Yeah, NBA. I'm thinking about obviously in baseball.
True. Yeah.
Are you familiar? Do you remember a quarterback, former Vikings quarterback with the name of Kellen Mond?
Oh yes.
You remember him well? Let's go into the bumper-to-bumper time machine for those who've forgotten. I don't even know if it's possible to forget just how a former head coach, Mike Zimmer, felt about said quarterback.
Do you think you want to get a look at Mond next week?
Not particularly.
Mike, why don't you want to get a look at him?
I see him every day.
Were you there for that exchange?
No, I think that was the end of the 2021 season in Green Bay, game that Kirk Cousins had missed because of COVID. And so Sean Mannion played most of it and Kellen Mond played a little bit of it.
That was dated January 2nd, 2022. So that checks out.
Okay, that checks out.
Not particularly, I think, is funnier that I see him every day.
No, that's the line. That's like That's brilliant comic timing.
Not particularly.
On the part of Mike Zimmer. You remind me that, well, I'm not going to overstate. Is it fair to say he did play a lot in what's the other league that you cover?
The UFL, the United Football League.
The United Football League season just concluded. Give me a Kellen Mond update. Is he making Mike Zimmer eat his words?
I don't believe he did. He played for the San Antonio Brahmas. I'm sure that's a team that you've followed extensively throughout the season. They finished with a record of 1 victory and 9 losses this year, so it was a tough one. He was one of 4 quarterbacks that played for them this year, but he played the most. He had the most attempts and yardage. I believe he threw for 850 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Tweet that. How many picks? Do you know?
2 picks in 7 games, and so this was a team that struggled particularly this year. I believe they had. At least went through 2 head coaches, might have been more, lost their offensive coordinator as well. So I think the way it went was, and some people like this about spring football, some don't. The offensive coordinator left the team early in the year, and then the coach left the team. And so the quarterback coach who had been promoted to offensive coordinator also became the head coach as well. And so it was quite a journey for that young man and for the entire San Antonio Brahmas team. But yes, Kellen Mond did play somewhat extensively this year, but I don't believe that he did anything to make Mike Zimmer want to watch him.
So it's fair to say that if the team around him wasn't great, there aren't any indications that he elevated the team to another level.
No, it does not appear that way at this time.
Yeah. Zim is out for good, by the way. Is that true, Mike Zimmer? Is he done with coaching, do we think?
If I had to guess, I would say yes. I don't think he's announced anything, and I don't know if he would. There's lots of guys who just kind of, fade into retirement and just go do their thing and don't feel compelled to make a big announcement or have a press conference. And my guess is he would fall into that category. He's got a lot of friends in the league, and there's lots of times when semi-retired coaches come back as favors or as consultants or for some other reason. And so I guess we can't rule that out, but it does not at the moment appear that he's planning to coach in the immediate future.
What are the odds that the Vikings at some point, as soon as this upcoming season, could convince Zim to come back to blow the Gala horn, whatever we call that thing? How good would that be?
That would be it was interesting because I'm actually working on a story about the Wilf family and how they've kind of managed to create a family atmosphere to the extent that you're able to in a professional football environment. And it reminded me that Brad Childress came back to visit. I don't know that his departure was particularly, pleasant, but he came back to visit. He brought his grandkids to training camp one day, and I remember him, sitting there chatting away with Ziggy Wilf. Mike Tice came back this past year, actually. I think he might have been on your show as well. And I can't remember if he actually blew the Gallahorn or not, but he was interviewed on the field during a game. So there's actually it would be the ultimate test of the Vikings culture of letting bygones be bygones, and maybe it just takes some time. I don't know, but they certainly when Brad Childress walked out of the door as the former head coach, I wouldn't have expected to ever see him around the Vikings again. Eventually, it happens.
I dare say that I think it's a bigger reach to think that Zim would be willing to do it than that the Vikings would be willing to allow him to do it.
Oh yeah. No, I agree. And so it'd be the test would be does he feel as drawn as some of those other guys to the beating heart of the Vikings culture to let bygones be bygones, or does he want to? Doesn't matter to him. Everybody's different, but I don't think that it's particularly normal for organizations to have head coaches that they fired come back and be part of anything that relates to the team, and they've managed to pull that off a couple times here.
So I've got one other UFL question. I think part of your job is to pay attention to, at least to a certain degree, right? I think isn't that one of your beats, the UFL? So
yes, the developmental process for the football ecosystem.
Okay, fair enough. Well stated. So, do we have what are the ratings like? Is it growing? Are people starting to get into it? Is it just something that exists that's there because if you put football on, some people will watch, but it's really not gathering steam? What's our sense of the viability of the UFL?
Well, I think the biggest thing I would say is that I think we hit, maybe 5 or 6 straight springs with some kind of spring league,
right?
Whether it was the old AAF or the XFL or the USFL or the UFL. And so there's that's more staying power, even though it's different leagues and in some cases different ownership than I would have guessed after the XFL came back and then went away that year during COVID. Because there has been no successful long-term spring football league ever. True. Even the original USFL, went down in flames after a couple years. And so just the fact that there's been a continuous, spring league speaks to some level of staying power. Yeah. But as far as the details and the data, the fact of the matter is, this UFL has struggled to build attendance. They get a lot of people at these games in St. Louis because there's a motivation on the part of fans there to show the Rams who left and went to Los Angeles that this is a football town, and they felt very jilted, and there was a pretty good core of football fans that felt jilted, and then they adopted the St. Louis franchise. So they do pretty well. But for the most part, you're talking about 10 to 11,000 people a game at these. They're not necessarily NFL stadiums, but big college, relatively big college stadiums. And so when you look at it on TV, it looks pretty empty. And the ratings have certainly not grown. And so ESPN is one of the broadcast partners, and Fox is another. And I think this year the ratings were down from last year. And so if you look at if you look at spring football as needing to have a lot of people watching it on TV or on streaming or whatever to succeed, then financially they're probably not there yet. But, there's a lot of cross promotion when you're basically they're owned partially by Fox and partially by The Rock and his investors. And so there's a lot of cross-promotional value that they get out of it. But in terms of it being a super long-term success, you would hope that they would get more people watching both in person and on TV than they are now.
Kevin Seifert covers pro football across the spectrum, as you now may discover or know, for ESPN.com, and, of course, joins us weekly during the season. And, quite frankly, there is no off-season in football, as he knows, as Ben Gessling knows, as several others know as well. Regarding the just concluded minicamp, here's the only question I have. Were there ways in observing the camp itself that, if nothing else, we can come to the conclusion that the off-season discussion, and you could even say investment, in the offensive line, for example, and extending the blocking tight end, that this team did look different in terms of the devotion to detail when it comes to more of a running game or more physicality, or those kinds of things really hard to pick up in that kind of a minicamp?
Honestly, no. I would really hesitate to commit to you that I see clear signs of any of those things. Okay. And not because I think that they weren't telling the truth or that it's not going to happen, but this is not the environment. The way the Vikings run, and Kevin O'Connell in particular, run this OTAs and minicamp, and first of all, they're basically exactly the same, except one's mandatory and one isn't, is basically, it's and O'Connell says, it's basically a passing camp. There's no contact allowed, and the way O'Connell runs the drills, the 11-on-11 is half speed. And the only kind of full speed stuff, at least the running full speed, is the 7-on-7, which is all throwing. And so that's why this was that's why we all talk about J.J. McCarthy all spring, in part because of quarterback, and that's what we do, but also because that was like the one thing that made sense to try to pull some things from, because other than the fact that the running back that they traded for, Jordan Mason, was there, and Aaron Jones was there, who they re-signed, and the new center, Ryan Kelly, was there, and the new left guard, Donovan Jackson, was there. There really wasn't anything to glean about whether the discussion about the running game and the commitment to the running game is actually going to come to fruition. I believe that that they will make those attempts, and we will see that in training camp and the preseason and early in the season, the regular season, but this was not the time to be able to draw that conclusion.
All right, what is fair, given, again, all of these sort of limitations and the time of year that we're at? What is fair for you to conclude, at least in writing form, about the J.J. McCarthy in his quarterback adventure?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and we had talked about this earlier in the offseason, but to the extent that there's any concern about his arm, I did not see it, okay. Did not have it reported to me or find out through reporting that anyone else has any concerns. There's a liveliness to it. We saw him make all the throws that are in an NFL route tree, and we saw and heard coaches talking about, hey, like, part of this offseason was to see what JJ is good at, what he might not be ready to do yet, what he's never, probably going to be strong at, if there's anything, and to then tweak the scheme, tweak the game, the process ultimately for making game plans, the personnel groupings, to get the most out of what he can give them this year. And so, and that should be a theme that we continue to talk about. I think, we'll put all of this on McCarthy. What does he look like? How does he look? Can he do this? Is he going to be able to do that? Well, how about also on the coaching? What are they asking him to do? Are they asking him to do the right things? Are they putting him in the right spot? That's at least 50%, if not more, of the ultimate answer on how he's going to be this year. I mean, he definitely carries a lot of the responsibility, but the people around him, in terms of the coaching and and in some cases the veteran players around him, will also bear some responsibility for it too. And that's what we saw happening. We saw some throws that weren't great. He's just not that good, or did they ask him to do something that just to see how he could do it? Or did they ask him to run a play against a defense where the read that he's supposed to make isn't going to be there because they knew the defense would have it covered because they set it up that way? I always say that every year I cover the NFL, I know less because I come into some realization about something I had no idea goes on, and that affects your evaluation of what you're seeing. And so some things you can just rely on your eye, like arm strength or leadership. The way players react to J.J. McCarthy, I think, are all pretty observable and pretty positive right now. How he will operate in the Vikings scheme, what they will ask him to do, how adventurous they will be with him, all remains to be seen.
So give us a little sense of why maybe Vikings fans should be encouraged about a rookie who has not obviously played a minute in the National Football League, a guard named Donovan Jackson.
Yeah, and you're probably referencing the story that Jeremy Fowler, my ESPN colleague and the former Vikings beat writer at the Pioneer Press, did today, where he talked to a lot of executives and coaches and personnel people around the league and about all different kinds of personnel moves. And one of the ones he came up with was talking to a coordinator in the NFL who said that he really liked the Vikings' decision to draft Donovan Jackson, and the reason he likes it because not necessarily because he's going to be a Hall of Fame, left guard in 15 years, but that he just has a very likely projection of being a really solid 10-year starter who, maybe makes a Pro Bowl here and there, stays on the field, locks down a position to the extent that you don't need to worry about it on a week-to-week or year-to-year basis. And this coordinator based that mostly on his own evaluation of Jackson prior to the draft and all the work he did at Ohio State, and just really commended the Vikings for taking, maybe it wasn't a sexy pick, maybe it wasn't one that we've written a whole lot about because of the position that it involves, but just to really, what this as well, just a really solid pick, a very solid person, not somebody you'd have to worry about in that regard. And there's nothing that NFL teams crave more than to find an offensive lineman that they can just lock in for a few years and not have to worry about it again. And if the projections are correct, then that's what the Vikings have in Donovan Jackson.
Meat and potatoes is the way I like to put it. First day of practice is when for the Vikings? When do Vikings quarterbacks report?
Yeah, I think J.J. McCarthy actually revealed to us that they report on July 20th. The first practice that's open, and that's a Sunday. The first practice that's open to fans is the following Saturday, July 26th. That probably means they'll be on the field middle of that week, whether that's Tuesday or Wednesday, just going through, the NFL now has a mandated ramp up period where, the first day it's almost like a mini camp day, and the second day is a little bit more, and the third day a little more, and the fourth, and it ramps up the body and tries to, limit the instances where players pull muscles or have some kind of, exertion injury because they just haven't gotten into football condition quite yet. And so, that first practice on Saturday will be the first one that's probably, close to a real practice. And then that following Monday will be the first full pads practice.
Good to catch up as always. We will be in touch. Thanks, Kev.
Okay, Dan.
Appreciate you. Kevin Seifert, ESPN.com.
Okay, have you heard about this? Last year, Degree changed the formula for their Cool Rush deodorant. Their fans rebelled and wanted the old scent back. And Degree listened. That doesn't happen often.
They admitted that they effed up and are bringing the original Cool Rush scent back. And it's exactly how you remember it. Cool, crisp, and fresh. There's a reason it's the #1 men's antiperspirant, and it's back in Walmart, Target, and other stores for under $4.
So try it and see what the fuss is about. Head to your local stores to try the OG Cool Rush for yourself.